This episode of Ludonarrative Dissidents is brought to you by Moritz Spots, who wants to shout out his podcast, The World of RPGs. His podcast is about role-playing games in different countries where English is not the main language. Each episode covers one country or region. What games are popular in Saudi Arabia? What unique games exist in Poland? How do you pronounce Cthulhu in German? And what's up with the kobold in Japan? Thanks for supporting the Kickstarter, Moritz. Be sure to check out his show. Links are in the show notes, and enjoy this episode. Welcome to Ludonarrative Dissidents, a podcast about role-playing games that are culture, design, and play. Each episode deep dives into one tabletop RPG book, mechanic, or style of game, taking it apart to see how it works and putting it back together to understand how people play it. I'm Ross Payton, joined by Greg Stolze and James Wallace. We've all written for RPGs, published our own games, and have worked in the field for years. You can learn more about us at ludonarrativedissidents.com. Hello, and welcome to Ludonarrative Dissidents, Season 3, Episode 11, Cyberpunk RED, the newest edition of the iconic Cyberpunk role-playing game from RS Talsorian Games, originally developed by Mike Pondsmith, a staple of role-playing games since the 80s. I think everybody's has been played or played games influenced by Cyberpunk in one or the other, and Cyberpunk RED certainly takes some risks, I would think, with the formula established in Cyberpunk 2013, the original edition. Of course, Cyberpunk is also the setting of the incredibly popular Cyberpunk 2077 video game put out by CD Projekt Red. Cyberpunk RED takes place in 2045, which is a different era. So there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, it's a whole generation before the setting of the video game, which is an interesting choice.
Who here has played the video game? I have not.
I have not either. I do want to play it. It's just been on my to-play list for a while, and I'm currently getting parts to build a new computer, which will probably be able to run it smoothly.
And that's why I haven't played it. I will say this. I approve, or I can see the reason for having this be in a different year than the video game, because I've seen so many video game adaptations that were crap, and where it's, either the tabletop RPG, the Titterpig. I just in the LND Discord, I found that pronunciation of TTRPG, so you're gonna get real sick of that, I promise. Often the Titterpig sucks hind teat to the video game because, the tabletop version makes X dollars and the video game version makes X with 2 more zeros on the end dollars if the game's successful. So you run into this thing where either people who haven't played the tabletop game are like, why is this dumb crap in my video game? I just want to shoot some cops. Or where people in the tabletop game are saying, oh man, this is just okay. So I get to be a background character to the plot beats of the video game and walk around establishing the vibes that when you play the video game, you're actually having things happen to you in. So I'm like, no, I get it. I see it. They did not want to have that hassle. They did not want to be encumbered by the video game stuff and have the video game dudes going, well, on page 277 of the game book, it says X, but if you look at the background of the cutscene from Cyberpunk 2077, you'll see non-X. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants the experience of having that guy point out a mistake no one else cares about to them.
Mm-hmm. But at the same time, the game book kicks off with an extended piece of fiction starring Johnny Silverhand, who is the central character of the video game. He's the guy Keanu Reeves plays.
The guy Keanu Reeves. Man, how many game designers would, after some consideration, let a dude chop off one of their little toes to have the guy Keanu Reeves played associated with their property. I mean, I'd consider it.
Yeah, but presumably I do not know the full background. I don't know how long-lived this character is supposed to be. I think Keanu's anyway, I think he's a ghost in the video game, or partly a ghost, or anyway. It's 30 years after the role-playing game is set. And yes, possibly he's kind of a Mick Jagger-esque figure, but it just feels slightly incongruous. Is this a younger, feistier Johnny Silverhand? It's an odd
Mick
choice.
Jagger will never die.
No, Keith Richards will never die.
Yeah, that's the real answer.
But has Mick Jagger died yet?
No. Now I'm afraid to pull up Google and check.
Well, there it is.
So
actually, Google will probably tell me that he has.
So I think the timeline thing is actually not entirely surprising given the history of Cyberpunk itself, because the first edition of it is set in 2013. It was published in 1988. And then
how much did they miss?
It's an alternate history. In Cyberpunk 2020, which was published 2 years later in 1990, they actually retcon history a bit to accommodate for the fact that Germany reunited. Cyberpunk 2020 is by far the most popular edition of the RPG scene. That's the one that was around for a long time. Cyberpunk 3.0 was published in 2005, and that's the action figure edition, which used the I'd rolled a heavy boulder over that memory to not confront those pictures. Most people have. Yeah, that's a common reaction. Where does Cyber Generation fit into this? Cyber Generation is published in 1993, and it's around the 2020 era, I believe. But Cyberpunk 3.0 is set in 2030, so every edition of Cyberpunk has advanced the timeline. And it's always the same timeline, and it's this alt history now. It diverges pretty abruptly from where we are. And I think what's really interesting to me is that when this came out in 88 originally, and even the second edition, we're still in the very, very early days of the internet. We're on dial-up connections, slow stuff, very low graphics, basically no animation, no streaming, no video. By the time, you hit 2005, the internet is in full flow. Broadband is widely available. Our entire perception of the information economy and the way we deal with this stuff has changed. Social networks are out there. MySpace is there. Friendster is there. I think Facebook is on the way. If it doesn't already exist, I can't. My memory of this stuff, I don't care, frankly. That's why your soul survived, James. I sold my soul in 1989. well, whoever you sold it to would have been really pissed if it had died because you cared about Facebook. This was supposed to be James's beautiful soul that I held in captivity and regarded on dark nights to cheer myself in my vileness. And look at this, it's shriveled up. Yeah. Yeah, I think I got a good deal on that one. Anyway, okay. I'm digressing. So it feels very alt because Cyberpunk's conception of the online world is very 1980s Cyberpunk, not even modern Cyberpunk. It's 1980s Cyberpunk. There's, the information resources available. It's Gibson's conception and Bruce Sterling's conception, Rhodey Rucker's conception of how all of this stuff might have looked in a world that hadn't yet seen what online looked like. And that's kind of interesting. And I think it does make for a good world background, though if what you're looking for is kind of taking where we are now and extrapolating it into everyone has cool technology built into their heads, that's not the game you're going to get. I kind of touch in that, our four questions. And the first is what it does. And my summation in my notes was, is alt history post-apocalyptic nostalgia punk a genre? Because that's really where we've landed, and the only way they couldn't end up in that terrain would be to just burn everything that they did to the ground and flip a gigantic cyber-enhanced double bird to the fandom and say, okay,
We're starting from a clean slate. Here's what cyberpunk means set in 2045 when written in probably 18, 19. And they didn't want to do that. And it's a valid choice.
I read an interview with Mike Pondsmith, and he talked about he was already working on Cyberpunk RED when he was approached by CD Projekt Red. And as he became an advisor on the video game, obviously. So that was like 10 years ago. That was like over 10 years ago. That was 2013 when he was approached. So he's already working on Cyber RED by the time that rolled around. So I think it's clear to me that Pondsmith is very interested in the world building and developing the setting and updating the setting because
a game designer interested in these topics. I'm shocked, I tell you.
I mean, and because there's so much material in the book alone, and he's very interested in creating this very rich world that you can look at from any sort of angle and come up with story hooks. And one thing this book does is present a lot of different campaign frameworks and models, not just the cyberpunk dudes on a mission hired by a corporate guy going to get betrayed by a corporate guy and shooting other dudes about it. Like there are other possibilities, but that's sort of the default. Yeah, the Rocker Boy, the Reclaimers. I was interested in that.
Was it weird to everyone else that the Rocker Boy signature character illustration was a woman? And they kind of touch on, and you guys are just shaking your head. You're like, Greg, you are trapped in an obsolete gender dynamic.
I was, of all the things you could have said at that point, that was not what I was expecting. What surprised me is that it's the first character class. It's the first one that you come up against, and it doesn't strike me as an obvious choice. What are you going to do in this world of the future and brilliant technology and zooming, flying through cyberspace and stuff? You're going to be a rock star. Okay, and what's the...
And they name check you too.
It's...
And I'm like, man...
Well, Rocker Boys have been around since the beginning. In fact, that was one of the first supplements in the first edition.
Do we know anyone who's played one?
Well, I mean, that's what Johnny Silverhand was a Rocker Boy, I think.
Yeah, that wasn't the question I asked, Ross. You've played? I presume you've played Cyberpunk.
I've played Cyberpunk 2020. And the one shot.
Greg, I've played Cyberpunk.
We actually used the Rocker Boys, the foundation of our group, because we played Lady Gaga and her band, and we did corporate missions as a side game.
Wait. Literally Lady Gaga, who would be how old in 2045?
You don't worry about that. You don't
Okay.
You don't have to worry about that. And I played
Major alternate history, Greg. Get with it.
We use like a nauseator at our gigs when we, it was great. It was just, it's on RPPR actual play. Lady Gaga 2.0. It was Lady Gaga 2.0 That was what we called it. So.
I might go back and have to listen to that. That might.
It was very serious. I can tell you that.
I can feel the Oscar performance vibes radiating out from you as you talk about it. Clearly, this was a life-changing thing. So did anyone else go through the process of making a character?
I did read this stuff, but I did not make a character.
James shakes his head. Ross shakes his head. I made a nomad. And the nomads interested me. I remember playing Cyberpunk. I can't remember which edition it was, ages ago.
Mm-hmm.
The scenario was, dealing with some bioengineered grain, blah, blah, blah. And, the GM did this great job of building the other side has this solo. She's crazy dangerous. She will tear you limb from limb. And we had the nomad character who was basically there to fly the chopper. And I just remember how impressed I was that he managed to fight one-on-one against this terrifying solo man killer for like 4 rounds, just dodging, just trying to get the hell out of there, just trying to survive, and genuinely impressed that he managed to not get murdered. And I'm like, okay, nomads, fascinating. I feel like Mad Max is much more of the Cyberpunk RED DNA than I would have expected. I would have thought it would be like 5%. Like, okay, you really, really loved Furiosa, so we're going to throw you a bone and you can play in this obscure little corner of the setting. But it's like, no, it's a big thing. Nomads are friggin' everywhere. It's more than I expected, and kind of into it because I don't have to learn those Netrunner rules.
Yeah, the Mad Max stuff is in the list of influences in the back. There's a lot of 80s media in there, including Overdrawn at the Time Bank?
At the memory bank?
Overdrawn at the memory bank?
Oh, wow.
The memory bank, that's it.
With what's his name?
Raul Julia.
Raul Julia, the only good thing about the Street Fighter movie, right?
Yeah. But a prodigious actor. Yeah, I was surprised to see it in there.
Maybe not the only good thing about it. The only thing I've seen of the Street Fighter movie is his "It Was Tuesday" monologue, which is poor man dying of cancer and filming a Street Fighter movie. That's freaking dedication to craft,
to pay for his, providing for his family, really,
right?
It was easy.
This is Street Fighter for my family.
Well, we should. So nomads for our listeners are the car focused character class that are expert pilots.
If your favorite movie is X, play Y, and if your favorite movie is Fast and the Furious franchise, you play a nomad. If your favorite movie is Sid and Nancy, you play a rocker boy.
These roles have always existed in Cyberpunk. One thing Cyberpunk RED does differently than previous editions is giving mechanical, unique abilities to each of the roles. Nomads have Moto, which gives them access to multiple vehicles, a motor pool, essentially, among other. There's multiple benefits depending on your rank and how high your ability is. Solos are the combat character, the John Wick class, and they have combat awareness, I believe, and they're also usually cybered up.
If your favorite movie is John Wick, play a solo.
And the rocker boys have a charisma ability, and so on and so forth. There's 10 roles, and each with a unique ability.
It's very video game character creation. It's like you choose your character class at the start of a video game. You know nothing about them. You choose on the cool ability that you want within the game.
Well, it's like D&D, just video games. Yeah.
It is different from previous editions where they had unique abilities, but it was not nearly as mechanically
crucial.
Out. Yeah. Well, yeah. Speaking of character creation, they do one thing that I find interesting is there's 3 ways to generate your character.
Yep.
Yeah. So the Street Rat template system, the Edge Runners Fast and Dirty system, and the Complete Package, which is the old school calculate everything. Here's a budget for skills. Here's a budget for equipment. And you just finagle every little thing, which is, how you did it back in the old days, but
back in the old days when we had attention spans.
So what did you use, Greg?
Pocket calculators.
I think I used the middle one.
Edge
because,
Runners?
the easiest one is just like you're at a convenience store and you just grab something from the rack by the cash register. Mm-hmm. And the medium one is a little more like, oh, well, I'm going to go buy jeans and at least get the inseam and waist right. And the third super finicky version is like getting a tailor-made suit to conceal your physique flaws. So it all depends on how many resources you have, only in this case, instead of it's cash from the convenience store through bespoke suit rating, it's how much time do you have and how much attention do you have for your cyberpunk character. They all use life paths, even the super finicky one, right?
And we've previously talked about life paths and Traveler. I mean, which refers Traveler or Cyberpunk in terms of using the life path system? Do you know, James?
Yeah. Original Traveler had a variant of it. Wasn't nearly as fleshed out, but essentially you generated what you had done up to the point that the game started, which gave you characters of variable ages with variable experience. And what you really wanted was a scout, because a scout had the possibility of getting a scout ship. Just the free ship, because if you don't have a ship at the beginning of the game, you're not going anywhere for a while. So I think Original Traveler was the first to do it, but it didn't flesh it out in terms of this is your character's personality. It's like, these are the skills you've got because you did 5 years in this section of the military, and this is what you learned. And then all the possibility, of course, infamously in the Original Traveler, you could die during character generation.
Yes.
Which I still think is great. Yeah, if you're going to take the risky options because you want the big rewards, you have to run the risk that you've just wasted the last 20 minutes of your life and you're going to have to start again.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, the Cyberpunk life path system is far more focused on your personality and upbringing.
Oh yeah. It's all background and story hooks.
I got a character that I never would have if I just sat down and done it, third way of, I'm going to micromanage every little detail. I never would have wound up with a nomad who came from a wealthy family but got separated from them by disaster while he was slumming it and running in the streets with his dirtbag friends, and where, it told me that my highest value is love, but at the same time, I'm somebody who views people as fungible, disposable tools. And I'm like, that's an interesting paradox to attempt to resolve during play. And, even just you're not one of these nomads who goes around dressed in like leathers and distressed denim that didn't start out distressed. It's just distressed because your lifestyle of licking the insides of discarded soup cans for nourishment is hard on your clothes. It's like, this guy wears like rave wear from East Asia and speaks Farsi and is from the Middle East. And so, yeah. Oh, and my notes in all capitals. Motherfucker has 0 friends, but no enemies, because the math is set up for you to literally not start play with no friends.
It's a very table-driven general character generation system, and it's very sequential as well. You roll on one table, and then you roll on the next table. You'll never go off to a sub-table. The results of one table do not influence the results of the next table. So you can end up, as you say, Greg, with somebody whose primary driver is love, but treats people as objects, which, that could be interesting to play. I read through this.
That could be fascinating to play.
I read through a lot of the options.
And I never would have come up with that particular broken self-destructive option if I was, it'll be fun.
Yeah, it could be interesting if fiction is what you're after. If you're after exploring a character you wouldn't have come up with yourself.
Well, obviously, I'm into exploring character. I'm a giant scenery chewing nerd.
Yeah. I remember the character I made for the Cyberpunk 2020 game. It was like, my parents were rich and lived high up in one of the corporate arcologies or something. And like, I was abandoned, put on the street, but I still loved them. So I was like, Sky parents, why have you abandoned me? And that became a running gag in the game.
That's some CP shit right there. Here is the insight I got from farting around on these life paths is I'm like, okay, the power to reject is a really neat part of creativity and can be powerful because, I got options where I'm like, no, I don't want that. I don't want to do personality type 10. I want to be personality type 4. Creativity, which is an integral part of the role-playing endeavor, any way you want to slice it. Even the games where it is the most handed to you in a prepackaged form, you are at some point going to unwrap that package and do your own thing with it. So we are all players, GMs, designers alike engaged in a thoroughly creative endeavor in a way that playing, even the best computer game isn't, because although you have a set of options that are so broad they seem infinite, they're not actually infinite. Minecraft, you could do all kinds of crazy stuff in Minecraft with the mods now, but it's still not in the middle of everything. I'm going to decide that, I'm going to leave my life as a gun for hire and become a barista because I've fallen in love with the girl in the store next door that sells soaps, which is hard to do in an RPG, but you can. The power to reject. When you're just faced with a blank sheet of paper and they say, make a character, and there is no constraint, often you'll fall back on your lazy first thought, or maybe I'm going to do a variant on this character I've played 3 or 4 times. If you're a super experienced gamer like Ross. I mean, my theory is that at this point in his gaming career, Ross has pretty much played it all. Have you ever played a serial killer character, Ross?
Yeah, I played in Medias Res.
Have you ever played a character who was an adorable little animal?
Multiple times. Yeah.
Have you ever played a character who was just a regular guy who got sucked into circumstances beyond his control?
Like a third of the games I play.
Have you ever played a super intelligent shade of the color blue?
God, I did play Itchers By. So maybe. Yeah.
Thought I might have got you there.
Yeah, it's been a while.
I feel I'm delighted to have proven my point that super experienced gamers, and it's part of the fun, is I'm going to play this character that is really different from me and is really different from the characters I usually play. And this life path is not going to push you super far in that direction, but it can get you there. It's one of the things I like about randomly generating characters. Also, there are people who are just like, no, I have this very specific idea of what character I want to play in this game, and I'm going to go towards that goal from jump. And, that's also fine. Listener, consider both ways.
Yeah, and that's certainly one of the strengths of the system is Cyberpunk RED does use the interlock system, which is been around since the beginning of Cyberpunk. Although, like I said, version 3.0 used the fusion system instead of interlock. Interlock, basic resolution is skill plus stat plus a D10 versus a target number. And in combat, that's the defender stat plus skill plus a D10. So like a simple difficulty value that you would need is a 9. So if your attribute's a 4, you have 3 in the skill, you're going to succeed basically. But obviously there are modifiers and there's so many different.
I got to be pissy about this. May I be pissy about this? I'm going to be pissy about this even without permission. Cumulative modifiers. Okay, here it is. Here's the hot take. Brace yourselves. Cumulative modifiers are just picking a difficulty level with more steps that you don't need. I don't know why we're doing this. This is math that nobody enjoys, or people who do enjoy it are the minority. In my perverse, twisted way, tempted to make a game where it's like, no, everything is just stacking modifiers. The whole point of the mechanics is stacking modifiers. All you're going to do is stack modifiers. And if you don't like stacking modifiers, then get the hell away from this, because we are stacking modifiers all the live long day. And, CP RED is not that. It's not that bad, but it's a little bit that. So, yeah. This system's got to be pretty robust if it's been around for, for decades and decades.
Yeah.
Since 1988.
I mean,
I looked at the grapple rules and I'm like, these seem okay. You've got martial arts for really invested players who want something that's fiddly, but no, I'm like, no, this makes sense.
Yeah, it hangs together. It's been tested to death, I would imagine. And just, stat plus skill plus dice roll goes back a long way. Other people have done this.
Yeah.
We know the quirks. We know how it works. They'll have balanced all the probabilities by this point. I agree absolutely about modifiers. One of the things about Cyberpunk is that it's fast and it's slick. As a genre, that's one of the core tropes. It doesn't stick around. It's not stodgy.
Yeah.
It's not, you don't get tied up in the numbers, because this is not, remember when Gibson wrote Neuromancer? He did it on a typewriter. He didn't know computers at all, which, so there's none of the details of hacking in there. It's just, it's very visual. It's very fast as well. For Cyberpunk to work, it has to have that dynamic. Any part of the system that's going to get bogged down, like modifiers, like finding the right modifier. And there are a couple of things in there. There's as part of the grappling rules, there's using somebody that you're holding onto and dragging them around to use as a human shield. Great idea. The actual rules for it, no, cumbersome. And that kind of, I thought, the execution is not, the concept is great. The execution is just too gamey. It's not right for at least the way that I have played Cyberpunk and have run Cyberpunk games in the past.
I think part of this is the same strength and also weakness of a legacy system. And this is definitely a legacy system, and is that it can't go too far in any given direction from the original. Otherwise, it's no longer the thing that it says it is. In order to be a cyberpunk, the next edition of Cyberpunk, you can't go too far away from what was already before it. Now, yeah,
you can't turn it into a game with cards or a Jenga tower.
Exactly. And in fact, there were some people who criticized this game because it does deviate in significant ways from 2020. In particular, 2020 was noted for having lots of gear board, lots of just in the core rule book having dozens and dozens of weapons with slightly different modifiers, including how cool your character was. Like there's different, like I think a style modifier. So, but in this one, they just have categories, light pistol, medium pistol, heavy pistol, so on and so forth. I saw some reviews, some discussion of people not liking that they like the whole shopping spree aspect.
I want this to be super granular.
I want to have the Arasaka heavy pistol with the armor piercing ammo and blah, 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 blah. So there's also some people who said the system has actually been simplified from previous editions, that characters firefights are the combat system is called Friday Night Firefight, which was released originally as a standalone little skirmish game. And that the original 1980s version of that was extremely lethal. And Cyberpunk 2020 was fairly lethal. And this one is not as lethal. There's also less tactical options. Like, I don't think there's an Overwatch mechanic. So if your character's fast enough that on their initiative, they could just go first, jump out of cover, shoot somebody, then jump back into cover, and no one can do anything about it. Kind of gamey, as James is talking about. So you don't want to be a Phoenix Command level combat simulation, but like, do you want characters?
Well, somebody wants that. Not a lot.
But
it's pretty specific.
There's also a lot of material at the beginning that makes it like very newbie friendly, like what is a role play game, how to do this, and tries to spell out all the pieces. So I think this is meant for people who are not more like video game players who are wanting to try the tabletop RPG. So I think simplifying it, making it more survivable was a game design goal.
I mean, I don't know if that arose so much from the text as much as from me thinking, well, if I had a CRPG with a Keanu Reeves tie-in, I hate to keep harping on that, but boy, I'm gonna. I hate this about myself. If I had that, I'd be like, no, I got to make this an on-ramp. I got to make this okay for patient zero.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's two things playing against it. First of all, there's almost no examples of play, almost no hand-holding to that regard. There are kind of sample adventure seeds, but not really a sample adventure.
The scream sheets.
And it's a 450-page friggin' book. It's, with fairly tight typography. There's a lot of words in here. If you are in...
How do the columns look, James?
How do
the columns look, James?
They look balanced.
Are the columns okay, James?
Typography generally does not feel... what is that header font? It's weird because the italics go the wrong way. And clearly this is a stylistic choice. And it's annoying. And
Fair.
Yeah, I didn't... And then there's a weird kind of jaggedy bibby line that looks like something off an oscilloscope along the bottom, or looks like a graphic designer's idea of something. It's jagged rather than smooth curves. And it's kind of a 90s concept of what a future graphic might look like. It's not doing horrible stylized. I moaned in the episode notes for the Alien one about please stop using OCR-A or Okra. Its name is not Okra, it's OCR-A as a futuristic font, which the Alien role-playing game does the whole way through. OCR-A was developed in the 60s as a machine-readable font for checks. If you are saying that you are still using paper checks in the future and you need a specialist typeface,
I got to look up Okra.
You'll recognize it immediately.
OCR.
And OCRB as well. You will also recognize immediately. And if you were born when we were, they say this is vaguely futuristic. And I'm sure to today's kids, it looks old-fashioned in the same way that the other machine-readable one with the big distorted stuff that's best known as the main logo on Rollerball, the original Rollerball, just looks... It's the past's idea of what the future would look like.
That's the one. That's the one I use in Termination Shack.
Yeah, it's.
I use a Czech font in Termination Shack. I'm bad, James. You hate me now.
It's okay. It's you're not a professional graphic designer. Professional graphic designers should know this stuff. People who have been trained how to use fonts. People who have entire books of fonts on their shelves. Guilty. Entire books about single fonts, individual fonts on their shelves. Yeah, it's
what is it? Is it just the coffee table pornographic Helvetica book?
No, there's
the Helvetica documentary is very
of
good.
Caslon typeface sample books and stuff. There's a series of small chapbooks, each one about a different typeface that you can buy, which are very good.
You want me to jerk us back onto our normal course of things? Guess what I'm going to complain about? Can you guess?
Okay, you do.
It's the use of will. Will is used 443 times in this 450.
Statistics fans.
About one per page. Although, now this is diluted by the fact that there is a will stat. So they're not all future conditional. But the 90 times they use you'll and the 23 times they use they'll, those are future conditional. And I'm like,
yeah.
Why?
Stuck in the 90s.
Why?
Yeah.
Oh God, that's where this belongs, in the dustbin of history.
One thing I'm glad they did update.
Not the whole game, just the future conditional usage.
They did make one significant change that I really approve of from 2020, which is how hacking works. Because in 2020, this is even more so, I think, than Shadowrun. The hacker character plays a separate minigame from everyone else, and is also just sitting in the room. Like that's what happened in Cyberpunk 2020.
Yes,
is they're just plugged in, but in Cyberpunk RED, access points are wireless but short range, so you have to go to the mission site / dungeon and be within like 6 meters of an access point in order to hack. And it's an augmented reality goggle, so you see what else is going on, so you can choose to spend your action hacking or to, I don't know, shoot the guy that's trying to stop you from hacking or you know.
I very much approve of this. I distinctly I played a hacker in my long ago Cyberpunk game, and I'm like, wow, so I just wait until it's my time to shine while, literally 20 miles away from all the other players, or from all the other characters, rather. We were all in the same room, but I'm like, yeah. So when I start hacking, the rest of these guys can go get tacos. And by the time they come back, I'll be done.
Yeah. And this has been a problem with Cyberpunk style RPGs since Cyberpunk was
since
the first. There was an immediate wave of them afterwards. ICE did Cyberspace using the Rollmaster rules system, which I have to admit I've never read. I know it has a Rick Veitch cover. That is the only thing I am interested in about that game.
Rick Veitch? Hold on, I gotta look this up.
It's very Rick Veitch.
I remember reading
the guy who did the Max Immortal.
And Swamp Thing, and did some of the Alan Moore Swamp Things. Great artist of the time.
I mean, Shadowrun does it too. The hack.
I was going to say Shadowrun.
What was it? Cyberspace?
Cyberspace, yeah.
I know what you're talking about. I reviewed one of the supplements for RPPR After Hours because it was a very silly, like, the entire state of California is an open air prison or something like that. Or Death Valley is an open air prison, and there's Amazonian street gangs, and it's just very silly. But
so many of those games from the 90s just get the future so completely wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, reading through some of the stuff in Cyberpunk RED, I'm deeply unconvinced by their future, particularly how little attention they pay to anything that's not happening in America. But I mean, the notable example for all of these, for people over on this side of the Atlantic, was Twilight 2000. Basically you are foot troops during in Europe after or possibly even during a limited nuclear war, in which large parts of the north of England and Scotland were ruled by gangs of football hooligans. Everyone in Britain just went,
Whoops.
They did no research at all, did they? Just no clue.
God.
It's a horrible kind of throwaway trope. But yeah, this kind of future casting stuff. But again, the dynamics, we were talking about the dynamics of hacking. It's really, really hard to get right. And I'm not sure, Red is a step in the right direction. I'm not convinced it's there not least because I'm not convinced by its depiction of how you hack something, which is basically you play a roguelike.
It's
like
a separate dungeon crawl.
It really is. It has multiple levels. It's described as architecture with floors, and you go down the floors,
and an elevator.
And there are monsters, and you fight the monsters with your cyberware, which is like casting spells. And it's just, you could almost be playing D&D, except it's not done visually.
The defense programs are called Black Ice, and they have fantasy names like Lich and Asp and like
Hellhound. Yes,
the hacking.
Yeah, hacking is certainly a step in the right direction, but as you're saying, Greg,
not perfect, but it's no longer. Oh, we're going to slam on the brakes in the middle of everything.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure there is some solution, and maybe in 2040 when they publish Cyberpunk 2077, they're like, okay, this is the really slick way that the hacker can get in and make and interface with every other kind of character class, and here's how they can make everything slick and and it's super frictionless. But by then, game resolution will probably be based on some kind of odor generating device. So God only knows.
The hacking is integral to the cyberpunk genre, so you have to have that in there. But like, how to make it something that works well with ensemble troupe play is the only way I could think of doing is like a radically different paradigm. Like you make everybody a hacker. Everybody has like some unique, different facet of hacking.
But some people don't want to. I don't want to play a hacker. I've done that. It was okay, but I'm like, man, I just watched Furiosa. I want to be a nomad.
Right, but
and then I wound up with a nomad who's nothing like a Furiosa nomad. I'm a nomad who can explain to you the difference between Pinot Noir and Cabernet Sauvignon. So,
well, important life skills.
But that's not, of course, that's not the only change they've made to the game aside from the mechanics. They've also updated, as we mentioned earlier, they updated the setting. And this is probably one of the more, it seemed to be from the discussion I saw, the most controversial, the least popular aspect of this new edition of Cyberpunk, which is the time of the red. This is like a soft apocalypse.
Speaking of needing to know the difference between a Pinot and a Cabernet in the time of the red,
So the time of the red is basically after the aftermath of the Fourth Corporate War, which includes a small nuclear weapon being used in Night City, the main setting of the game, taking out Arasaka Tower and a large chunk of downtown, obviously, and also the use of orbital weapon or artillery, as they call it in the game, and just general devastation, havoc. There's like a red air pollution, the sky is literally red and there's just this pollutant dust everywhere. And so they call it the time of the red, and like things are falling apart. Society hasn't totally gone Mad Max, at least in the big cities, but it's like there's scarcity. Things are more expensive.
You can get to Mad Max in an afternoon's drive.
Yeah. And we've talked before about Dark Future, the Games Workshop cyberpunk RPG that never was and finally appeared as a model car futuristic kind of post Mad Max thing. But their thing was basically there are the cities and they are gleaming technology and futuristic lifestyles, and everything else is a dust bowl. It's wasteland inhabited by bandits and people with very bad hair. And that as a background.
It's really all the hills have eyes and chuds.
And Mad Max, yeah.
Yeah.
And Mad Max.
I mean, they literally mentioned the new Rust Bowl here on like page 234, talking about the history of the dark future. Welcome to the dark future is literally a chapter,
and that hangs together. You can visualize that. You can understand how that would work. I'm just flashing back to something that's right at the start of the game. There's 4 lines that encapsulate cyberpunk, and cyberpunk with a small lowercase c and cyberpunk with a large C. Style over substance. Attitude is everything. Always take it to the edge. Break the rules. And Yeah, the red sky and everything, style over substance. And then there's like 50 pages, not of background, of history, of stuff that has happened in the past that is not tied into your character generation system at all. So, all of this stuff happening and the world blowing up in various different ways and disaster stuff, none of which is directly relevant to any of the characters you can create within the game unless you have read the background and go, oh, well, it says we had to up sticks and move. Well, that was clearly because whatever city it was fell into the sea during one of the earthquakes.
But I mean, gamers love this stuff. Well, game designers love this stuff.
And the world, it's Mike Pondsmith. His world building is great. It's fun stuff to read. I wasn't getting adventure hooks from it. I wasn't getting character background. It's just like this stuff exists.
There are lots of hooks and there are lots of character background stuff, but it's not in the history. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's not in the history. And there's a lot of the history in here. It doesn't feel relevant, particularly in a game that literally front and center as you open the book says style over substance. 50 pages of world history?
Style matters much more than substance. Here's 50 pages of substance.
I may be exaggerating with the 50 pages. It felt like 50 pages.
I mean, it's a 458-page book.
Was it just me, or was there repetition where it's like in one section, it's like, here's how you run through this. And then later, it's like, remember, here's how you run through this. And I don't mind in the PDF. I think if I bought the 450-page hardback that's heavy enough to stun a burglar with one blow, I might be a little saltier about repetition.
I borrowed a copy from a friend. It is not thin. It is.
Look at that dick boy.
Yeah, it is.
I've seen worse, but yeah.
Yeah, it's about average for a trad RPG, I think.
These days.
Yeah, these days.
God, I remember when 300 pages was pushing it.
Oh yeah, I mean, but we're now in like Haunted West is still like 800 pages. There are RPG.
Yeah. Can I make a little observation? Let me find it. It's on page 196, right? The heading Meta. About 2035, a new programming language was developed to unify all the different operating systems and And so I read that and I'm like, Meta.
Yeah.
What year did this book come out? And what year did Mark Zuckerberg change the Facebook company's name to Meta? And I'm like, I didn't think it was possible for me to respect Mark Zuckerberg less. But I choose to believe that he has a copy of this book and read that, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to name my company Meta because it's going to be like this thing in CP22, in CP.
The rebrand was in 2021, cool. And this book came out in 2018, I believe. So 2019, yeah.
Yeah.
So
we've looked inside the mind of a billionaire, and it is just a squirming mass of pupating grubs.
Yeah. But a lot, like we mentioned, a lot of this game is, or the setting now in 2045 is about rebuilding and reclaiming. Like the reclaimers are people who are trying to go back to abandoned neighborhoods and buildings and towns and rebuilding them, reclaiming them. And that can be that's one of the campaign frameworks that's mentioned towards the end of the book. In some ways, almost closer to red markets than it is Cyberpunk 2020. Like it's a, like I said, a soft apocalypse. Like things are scarce, things are more expensive. You obviously can still get cybernetic enhancements, but they're more expensive or harder to get than they were in 2020. I feel like a lot of this history stuff is almost like Pondsmith's work product to get to the game where he wants it to be, like him figuring out how we got from 2020 to 2045 and why things are different, because he wants every edition of the game to be different thematically, is sort of the impression I get. So
careful, Ross, you're going to make it sound like this is an artist producing a work of art.
Oh my God.
And man, once you make that assertion, they're going to come for you, boy. They're going to come for you, my friend.
But it's Mike Pondsmith. He is really good at this stuff. Yeah, it's, not just Cyberpunk. Don't forget Castle Falkenstein which pushed back one of the first card-driven games. Beautiful work of art, full color, gorgeous, kind of steampunky stuff. Back when steampunk was still cool. There was a brief while when steampunk was cool. He's a fantastic designer.
It's not bad.
He's been in the industry since the late 80s.
Right. I mean, you cannot expect someone to do this stuff for this long, this successfully, and be bad at it at any point, or to be worse at it than he was when he started out. I mean, people, every now and then a creator goes off the rails, Dave Sim style, but as a general guideline, skill increases with time. Yeah. Your passion and your ability to pull long hours just, chasing down that story may diminish. But I mean, my experience is older creators make fewer dumb mistakes, and that's not nothing.
The thing is, I think for a lot of fans, they're used to the 2020s, chrome and slick focus on hypercapitalism, in the sense that you can get anything you want if you have enough money and you're ruthless enough to get it. But like in this one, it's just, you're not things. It's more about the dense urban locale. And in Cyberpunk RED, I think Pondsmith is trying to get people to run games out in the suburbs, out in the reclaimed wastes, get away from the core downtown areas of Night City and explore the wider world. And a lot of fans may not like that. They want the same thing of like being tricked out solo cyborgs fighting off corporate hit squads while their buddy hacks the mainframe and like a rocker boy distracts other people with a cool performance.
I mean, but that's still on your shelf. If that's your bag, if you want the same thing, why are you buying a different thing? And I mean, fans want the new thing, but they want the new thing to be like the old thing. Well, and I may have said before, I know I've said before, I don't know if I've said it on this podcast, that usually the recipe for success is the same but different. And what you want is the right balance of, well, how much same, how much different. And I'd say RED strikes a pretty good balance. RED is trying to maneuver in a present where it is constrained by what went in the past, but it's also uplifted by its storied, well-remembered past. So it can't... we were talking in the live stream, you guys mentioned Outgunned, right? Mm-hmm. Which I think we might have to do a whole episode on. We'll see. Outgunned is very, very different from this. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the reasons is that they did not have any legacy to which they were tied. They're like, okay, let's start from zero and see where we go.
Yeah.
And because of that unconfined start, they went somewhere really interesting. When the first Cyberpunk came out, it was the unconfined start that went somewhere really interesting, but it's no longer that. It's no longer the upstart.
Yeah, and let's remember the original Cyberpunk 1988. It was a boxed set. There were 3 books in there. The handbook was 44 pages. The source book was 38 pages. The combat book was 20 pages. There were a few game aids and a couple of 10-sided dice, and that was it. That was the entire world and background and system. Because it was the 80s and it was enough to say, it's Cyberpunk. And, that was the start.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. But Cyberpunk was a new genre. It had only really come through in the last few years. Yeah. Neuromancer was at the start of the decade. Bruce Sterling's Mirror Shades, the anthology that basically defined Cyberpunk, was, I can't remember. I ought to remember. 84, I think? 85?
And we've lived long enough to see it become nostalgic.
It really is. Sure. It's very odd. And there was a sense, I got a tone of nostalgia from this book for this future that never was. And in fact, there's a story in Mirror Shades called The Gernsback Continuum about...
Oh, I love The Gernsback Continuum. It's so good.
future, science fiction essentially for futures that never happened.
Paleo futures.
Well, I remember who was it who had the zine of Retro Future? I think
Paleo Future.
I want to.
I mean, there's a blog called Paleo Future about futures that never were.
No, this is older. This is from like Alarms and Excursions era.
Okay.
And the idea was, this guy was he was a scholar of science fiction from the past that we have now lapped, the science fiction that has decayed because it's like, well, no, we hit the year 2000 and it's nothing like the novel 2001. The novel 2001 is very different from what we remember of 2001.
Yeah.
Looking back at, oh, wow. Yeah, we could, in retrospect, we could have handled a lot of those things a lot better.
And 2010 is even worse.
Well, one thing I think that we handled even better was cyberpsychosis.
Yes.
In this game.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it wasn't to the understanding that we had in the 80s when this first came out.
Yeah.
When the concept was first bruited about. It wasn't horrific.
Let me explain it for the listeners who are not familiar.
Explain it. Yeah.
So in the original edition of Cyberpunk, cyberpsychosis was essentially a game balancing mechanism to why not just get everything cybernetic and just make my guy into a brain in a robot body. Cyberpsychosis is basically you have a humanity stat, and getting more cybernetics would lower your humanity stat. And if you went to 0, your character would be a cyber psycho, and which a non-playable mass murdering character that would be taken out by a specialized SWAT team, max tac or usually something like that. And so it was entirely a game balance thing to keep players from becoming too murder hobo-y. And that's a very ableist kind of prosthetic limbs making you less human is ableist, to say the least.
It raises the issue of, I desire to change my body. Does that make me a bad person? Mm-hmm. I want to get a little cosmetic surgery, and now I've reduced my humanity, without dragging in the idea of, is a person who has gender correction surgery at risk of cyberpsychosis. Right. And so this book is like, no, man, no. It's just if you deliberately choose to get rid of something that works fine in order to replace it with an impersonal machine that works better.
That's what Cyberpunk RED does.
Yeah, I still find it somewhat problematic. My father had 8 joint replacements. He was riddled with arthritis. Every joint below his waist was artificial. Both hips, both knees, both ankles. One of the hips wore out and he had it redone.
Wait, he didn't do toes, did he?
No, thank God.
I hear toe replacement is just garbage.
But
everyone I know who's had a knee or a hip is like, this is a fucking miracle.
Yeah.
But the people I know who've had toes are like, toes are crap. They can't do it. Where's the steel, which is strong? This is just plastic.
I don't know. I think it's still problematic. I understand exactly why it's in there. And within the structure of the game, looking at the game as a complete role-playing game, I'm making hand gestures now, attempting to describe with my hands the structure of a role-playing game. It feels exactly the same role.
Those gestures really explain everything, James.
Damn it. We should have gone to video.
Too bad we didn't record those.
It's SAN. It fills the same role that the SAN stat does in horror games, because there are elements of Cyberpunk that are horrific. And I think Cyberpunk done well, there are horrific elements in there. At the same time, it's very 80s Cyberpunk as well. It's going back to that stuff. There's a quote that crops up on social media an awful lot in the last couple of years, and it's from Count Zero, which is the second one. I can never remember whether Count Zero or Mona Lisa Overdrive is the second or third. But it's Gibson, the high prophet of this stuff. And the line is, and for a second she stared directly into those soft blue eyes and knew with an instinctive mammalian certainty that the exceedingly rich were no longer even remotely human.
I mean, that's just true.
It's true, yes. And we know, good God, we know these days how utterly true that is. But at the same time, is the horror about swapping out bits of your body part for bits that work better? Or is it about what greed and power can do to the human psyche? I would say that within this setting. And Pondsmith has gone the other way. He's toned down the power of mega corporations. They are no longer running the world, which they were in the earlier editions. And it felt to me muted. It felt like a less interesting background. This is, my take on Cyberpunk. Yes, I read I read Gibson in the early 80s. It was a profound influence on my understanding of near future science fiction in particular, but also making me want to write this stuff. I'm one voice. I can see that it would work for some people, but as if you're calling your game Cyberpunk, it needs to hew to the core essence of what is cyberpunk. And the failure of the state, the gross power of capitalism, how everything is driven by money and desire. That for me is a very, and you are the punks, you are the unruly ones railing against this, howling and using technology. There used to be a newsletter over here in the UK in the early mid-1990s, in the white heat of the internet boom. It was called NTK, which stood for Need to Know. And they did a T-shirt, and I still have it, and I still wear it. And it says, "They stole our revolution. Now we're stealing it back." And that, for me, is what a cyberpunk game should be. You're not out there, righting the wrong of your friend so-and-so. You're taking control. You're taking control back. It should be a revolutionary. If you're an active character within a cyberpunk background, and there are a lot of small press. You should be a revolutionary. You should be working against them.
You should be burning stuff.
Exactly.
You should be like, no, I don't like this. I am going to do something about the intolerable conditions in which I find myself. Yeah. And it is going to be something profoundly upsetting to the comfortable.
Yeah. We are recording this less than a week after Trump took power. And my social media feeds, which are very RPG based, have been flooded with small press games about being a revolutionary, being a dissident, being in a totalitarian state and surviving. Some of them explicitly, these are games as propaganda. I don't know if any of them are going to be worth a damn. I don't know the credentials of any of the people who have written them. One of them was written anonymously because people didn't, and they were basically, it was a manifesto about, social unrest. But we are living in a world where tech billionaires, and fairly soon trillionaires, one of whom runs a company called Meta, are essentially on the verge of controlling our world. And we're gamesters and we're games designers and games players and using games as a medium to fight back, or at least to give us a shape by which we can fight back. The question of whether there's a space there, whether this is a real thing, or whether it's a way of just making us feel a bit better about the situation. And I'm kind of assuming that people are coming at this. I'm in Europe. And Europe is aghast at Trump. Europe generally, whichever country you are in Europe, you are more left-wing than the USA. That's just a matter of general policy. Doesn't matter if you're Hungary.
Wait, does Turkey count?
Turkey counts. Hungary counts. We are more.
Turkey is more left-wing than America.
Sure, yeah.
Shit.
Well, socialized medicine.
Now you made me sad.
Oh, great. This is a sidebar, but the stuff about everyone fleeing TikTok and joining the Chinese the Chinese TikTok equivalent, the actual Chinese one, and reporting the conversations they've had with Chinese people, including one Chinese person asking their new American friend, "Hey, is it true that you actually have to pay for ambulances? Or is that just propaganda put out by our government to make us hate America?"
Yeah.
Like, no, man, that's basically a policy decision by our government that makes us hate America.
The flip side, I've seen like a story saying Americans are teaching Chinese people how to 3D print guns. Like, that's our first thing we're doing.
y'all don't know how to make a ghost gun?
Yeah, exactly.
God darn it. This is gonna change everything for y'all.
The ammo's the difficult part. But what I'm saying is we are living in a future which is not unlike, apart from the cyber gear. The cyber gear is the obvious thing, but apart from that, the future is not unlike that portrayed in the original 1988 cyberpunk role-playing.
If you look at a Ukrainian drone pilot wearing goggles influencing the battlefield, that's very cyberpunk.
It's incredibly cyberpunk. And now we have the latest version of cyberpunk.
We created the torment nexus.
That's
Multiple
kind of it. I'm not going to say it's not in any way a bad game. It's just, for me, it is no longer a cyberpunk game. It's an alt future game. That happens to include many of the tropes that we associate with cyberpunk.
Man, James, that's a spicy take.
I would agree, James. It's definitely an alt future. It's significantly
it can be an alt future and be a cyberpunk game.
One thing I wanted to note about the cyber psychosis, going back to that briefly.
Sorry, completely derailed.
No, it's fine.
It was a passionate derail. I'll allow it.
The book's thesis is that cyberpsychosis is a dissociative disorder because you're literally dehumanizing yourself by giving performance enhancing augments, because prosthetics, medical and necessary ones, replacing lost limbs, that sort of thing, causes no humanity loss. But adding cyber claws or implanted guns or things that make you faster than a human can be, they do. But also traumatic events can lower humanity, reinforcing James's the sand thing. But the really interesting thing is that humanity can be healed in this edition of Cyberpunk through therapy. Which I think is new, because I have had players, I know people who are have body dysmorphia issues, and they would find cybernetics to be emotionally stabilizing or helpful. And so this is sort of like the most controversial thing about it, but I think it's a step in the right direction. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in knowing how to do this. I mean, Eclipse Phase is like, you can do whatever you want. It doesn't matter. Nobody cares anymore. But that's like far future, science fiction.
Okay, well, let me get personal with this. I mean, my back hurts every day because I have an inoperable osteoarthritic spine that's grown into the nerve in my back, and it doesn't hurt all the time, but it hurts fairly often. And I'm like, okay, if I had if it was operable, if I had the opportunity to take that out and replace it with a machine that works better, oh my God, I wouldn't think twice. And it's like, and even if you told me this will distance you from your emotions and it will make you a little less relatable as a human being, I'd be like, but I won't hurt every day. Okay, I'm already very relatable and into my emotions. I can take that hit. I'll take it for not being in pain.
In Cyberpunk, that wouldn't affect your humanity. What would affect,
because it's medically necessary. Right. So what about Oscar Pistorius in Cyberpunk? Because on one hand, he the replacement of his legs was medical, but on the other hand, all these whiners have said, oh, he only won those races because he was missing both legs and had them replaced with superior carbon fiber blades. Where? You can see from the sarcasm where. I mean,
but if you could
that was how I felt before he shot his girlfriend. Right. He's a complicated.
Bad. If your spine would allow you to slow down your perception of time to where you could see the wings of a fly move in slow motion, like that would be the argument that you're doing something humans were never able to do, and that might affect you and cause dissociative tendencies to crop up. So that's the game's argument for my reading of the text.
That would be so cool that I might just suck up the occasional dissociative episode.
Yeah, exactly. But then what if you start wanting to get more? Why don't I enhance my limbs so I can move as fast as I think I can move now? And then and it could be an addictive behavior as well.
Okay. So taking me and my personal weaknesses and flaws, and maybe this mechanic actually is. So that's
that's my interpretation of the game's.
That's the argument.
So,
that.
But yeah.
Well, so it is hubris. It's I want to be more than human, in this way, and that must be paid for by making me less than human in another
It's
way.
Faustian, yeah.
Which, I mean, you see it.
Mm-hmm.
You see it every day where it's like, I want to have more money than any human could deserve. And because of this, I have cut myself off from experiences that 99.99% of humanity has. And we're back to the Gibson quote.
Well, we could also look at like performance enhancing drugs, especially among athletes, or people who don't even get performance enhancing, but like the appearance of it, like synthanol users, which if you aren't familiar, are people who basically inject oil into their biceps to give themselves the appearance of having larger muscles. And it's very bad for you. And it's very gross. And it's very, oh boy, you have intense body.
I'd never heard of this. Thanks,
Oh,
Ross.
it's horrifying. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the thing I remember.
But human growth hormone uses and like all kinds of gear. Yeah.
Back in the day when everyone was talking about steroids during the McGuire, and who was that guy on the Cubs? That fellow who wasn't quite Mark McGuire, but
Sammy
close.
Sosa.
We were all talking about steroids. Sammy Sosa,
Yeah.
that's the one. Thanks, Ross. And so someone's argument was, if you told a high school athlete you can score 2 more points every game, but you're going to die 10 years earlier when you're an old man, a number of these teenage athletes would take that deal because teenagers are not very good at imagining themselves as old men. And yeah, man, I'm like, yeah, that's it. A lot of people would be like, oh, get better today. So that, and the guy who pays for that is future Craig. Fuck that guy.
Yeah. I mean, teenagers signing up for the military or college loans that they can't afford. Yeah.
Let me just throw this out there. If you're listening, on the off chance that you're listening to this podcast and you're considering going into the army in the United States, don't.
Greg, you're assuming that young people listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
I'm assuming
Some
there's
do.
such thing I said on the
I've
off
talked to them.
chance.
There's literally some of them. They exist.
There's literally 5s of them.
Maybe, hopeful, maybe more. We'll see.
Take it from old man Stolze. You don't want to be doing
Going back
that.
to James's discussion, I think you kind of nailed it on the head, because I think Cyberpunk is it's a legacy game. It's become its own thing. And so it's not Cyberpunk the genre, it's Cyberpunk the game the genre. And this is just the latest iteration of it.
It's capital C Cyberpunk in that graffiti typeface.
But there are some really good. One of the things I do like is there's a lot of this world building comes up, especially towards the back of the book, in really fun ways, because like there are the random encounter tables for like the bodega and like my favorite, the vending machines. And having just been to Japan where vending machines are just omnipresent, I know if I was running Cyberpunk Red, there are going to be some weird vending machines at weird places. Like you break into a forgotten bunker and there's a perfectly working vending machine for capsule toys, and you don't know why it's on this level, but it has a flamethrower, so you can't mess with it. I love those little
I would
bits.
absolutely have the flamethrower have been added later.
Oh yeah, exactly. There's some service tech who gets there. He's like, I don't know what this place is. Man, I got a contract and I got to fill this up with capsule toys.
How did I get here? I don't know, man. I'm just trying to get from the cab to the curb without some nomad knocking my head in for the gas in my car's tank. Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
That's your campaign model. You're the vending machine guys. You're running to all the places, trying to fill them up, dodging.
It's like the postman, only good.
Yeah.
That would be right. Those gang headquarters are going to have them. And, and the young punk goes in, I'll smash this thing. It's like, no, the fuck you won't. It's, if you touch that machine with anything other than a quarter, it'll be more than a quarter these days, obviously. I'm gonna blow your head off your shoulders.
Look, I got 100 cans of Neo Cyber Cola. I need to get it in that machine before they get warm. Just let me out. Just let me go, man. Like, yeah.
And then we're gonna get back to, what was it, Cointrack Island.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
horribly sentient vending.
Yeah.
Please.
I just like weird vending machines, okay? It's just a thing I think
if you buy a Red Bull, it will give me pleasure.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. The vending machine that tries to guilt you into buying condoms. That would be great.
Oh, you two look like you're hitting it off. You need something for later tonight? Yeah.
You look like you know each other, but don't fully know each other, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You know what ruins an early romance? STDs. And they're nobody's fault. We're all adults here. But why put your partner through that? Make a good impression.
I'm writing to Pondsmith this evening, pitching this as a supplement.
Oh, yeah.
Actually,
go for it.
Back when Cyberpunk came out, Atlas Games had the license to do third-party scenarios for them, little ones, kind of 24-page ones. I almost wrote one, had a good plot, can't remember anything about it now. But they would have published a book of vending machines for your Cyberpunk future back in the day. I will phone John Nephew of 1990 and pitch the supplement to him.
John Nephew of 1990 didn't hate me, but I thought he hated me.
But there are a lot of random encounters that are really interesting.
It was just a absolute difference of personal styles where, which I've since straightened it out. So,
good.
I'm
glad.
Like, I remember, I don't think he likes me, man. No, he likes you just fine. But I don't know. It's just, so yeah. Anyway, we're getting nostalgic.
One of the minor things is this is one of the few RPGs now that has like in-world pages, like my favorite is page 434, the Hello Cutie handgun, the cutest pistol on the market. It's kind of a thing you see in older RPGs, but this is the only new RPG I can think of.
I haven't seen it for a while. It's the one that kicked it off, I think, was Star Wars. The original West End Star Wars, which had like adverts for R2 units and X-Wings, and they were jaw-dropping. It was just like seeing this as a piece of in-world culture in the Star Wars universe, which us of a certain age, loved since our age was in single figures. And now to actually see it presented as if it was real, just gorgeous. I felt the graphic design it didn't feel futuristic. It felt kind of modern day.
It's a little basic, but
retro futuristic.
And just while we're back to graphic design, there are a lot of tables. There's a lot of tables in this book, and they are not terribly well presented tables. I haven't seen this many tables in a role-playing game rulebook for a long time.
They've definitely cut back on the number of things that you mentioned, their weapon categories instead of specific weapons. The cybernetic stuff is pretty basic, but not super elaborate. Yeah, just kind of done in little tables. I would agree with that. This is a game you want to play if you want to play Cyberpunk in the Night City setting. There's enough here mechanically that it would be pretty easy to pick up, and especially with making template characters or fast and dirty characters. Sure. And with the roles, characters actually feel a little unique, giving them unique abilities. So it's not just I have good gun skill, I am a solo. It's like I have my unique special thing that only I can do.
I understand combat in a way that you don't.
But yeah, the game design is definitely still tied down by its legacy. There's a lot of Cyberpunk setting RPGs now that seem a lot more interesting. I've heard Hardwired Island is supposed to be really good. Neon Overdrive, I think Neon Sunset Overdrive, something like that. And of course, Eclipse Phase is its own thing, but if I was running a Cyberpunk type setting, I don't know if I would use this. I would only run this if I was doing something in the Night City, probably after I play the video game.
If it was capital C Cyberpunk and not small C Cyberpunk.
They do have I didn't have time to read through, but there is the Edge Runner's Mission Kit, which takes material from the anime and also includes material to run it in 2077 as opposed to 2045. So you can, in fact, learn what happens after the anime, and also if you want to run it in the video game, use the Edge Runner's Mission Kit.
Yes, I have to say, I did watch the anime a couple of years ago when it came out, and it's
absolutely brilliant.
It's pretty slick. The trouble is, it came out, I believe, shortly after Arcane, which is so much better. Because Arcane is transcendentally, for anime based on a game.
It's that good.
It's the one based on League of Legends, but it's so much better than League of Legends.
I've heard people talk that it's good, so I should watch this, you think?
You should watch Arcane, yeah.
I thought
Yes.
Edge Runners was amazing. I thought that was transcendental. Like I thought
It wasn't as good as Arcane was the problem.
All right. I tried to watch Arcane. I couldn't get it left me cold after the first episode. So
I hate it when you fight. Wait, no, I secretly love it when you fight. Go.
My partner watched Arcane. I watched Edge Runners, and I think Maddie watched Edge Runners as well. I'll have to ask them which one they liked better. But that song they play in Edge Runners, I'll think of that anime every time I hear that song, which is a very good song.
Okay.
Greg, you can break the tie. You have to watch both of them.
I haven't watched either.
You have to watch both of them now.
So I have to. I have homework now, man.
Ask us.
You just threw me a 450-page book to digest.
I'm sorry, I don't make the rules, and this is definitely enforceable.
There are rules now. Can I get in my comments on who plays how in that way?
Sure.
And why they play it that way. So this is my theory based on nothing but what seems right. My theory on who plays it is people who've played Cyberpunk in the past are probably a large segment of the market for Cyberpunk in the future and the present. And I mean, it's a little nostalgic, but I imagine they're doing cool, interesting things with it. And I'm sure that somewhere there are people who have been playing some edition of Cyberpunk, maybe each edition of Cyberpunk since the 80s, with a continuous through line that is brilliant and deeply moving. And they're now going to grab Red, and the characters in it are a mixture of the children of their original characters and like the children of their characters' nemesises. And it's going to be so cool, and they are going to have an amazing freaking time, and we'll never know about it because they're not going to do it as a podcast or an AP. They're just going to have this incredible role-playing experience, a multi-generational role-playing experience, probably dragging their own kids into it to play with them. And God bless, and I wish them the most amazing time.
I do.
So, I mean, I think that's, in my mind, that's one segment of the Cyberpunk RED demographic. Another is the people who are like, oh, hey, this will be like the video game. And, hey, good on ya. In my heart, in my aging, irregular heart, I am so glad that R. Talsorian did not take the dumb, easy way out and say, we'll throw away all of the interlock history and we'll just do it as a 5e compatible.
Thank God. Yeah.
Which I feel like would have been in some ways the easy, lazy, apparently profitable choice, but probably would have sucked. It would have.
There were literally articles written, I think, on Dicebreaker or Polygon that was like, how to run Edge Runners in 5e.
It's like, or
I don't know, this whole bespoke system.
Hear me out. Maybe you could try using this thing that's spent 30 years doing them.
I do want to say that Cyberpunk 2020 is still in print, thanks to Print on Demand and RS Talsorian. You can still get all the books for 2020.
Yeah, if you feel like Cyberpunk RED is a terrible betrayal of Cyberpunk 2020, good news. Yeah. You can get your retro nostalgia futurism on demand. What a time to be alive.
Your original copy is probably still in your mom's attic.
Or at a game store, or on eBay.
Wow, cheap shot, James. Low blow.
There are many copies floating around.
Oh, yeah.
I probably have one myself.
I mean, it's been a successful game, and there's a reason for that. Okay, so, all right, here we go. When we were talking about Vampire, one of the things I spoke about that people seem to respond to was the idea that it can contain a lot of disparate play styles and reconcile them. Is this I think Vampire is in some ways at a very high watermark for that, But does Cyberpunk do it too?
I think it can. It's just that people, I think there's the game as written can definitely, like, there's multiple campaign frameworks in the back of the book that describe, like, oh, you could be gang members, you could be reclaimers, you could be nomads, nomad tribe,
a flighty rock star, and
they're
their
bad
entourage.
Yeah. But it's been so crystallized as the heist crew working corporate missions that, like, the players don't want it to be more expansive than it is. They want that edge runner experience. Fair. And the game is like, you could do all these look at all these other things. No, Night City.
And that's
Friday Night Firefight.
It's like McDonald's saying, well, we also we also serve pizza now. And everyone's like, if I wanted pizza, why would I go to McDonald's? Hell no. Give me a Big Mac and shut up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but that is not our end of our coverage of Cyberpunk, because it is not. Our next episode is going to be Cyberpunk Red Black Chrome, the gear guide, because we're covering supplements, and why not cover the newest version of the gear guide? Because a lot of people, some people at least online, complained about the book having categories instead of like lots of name specific weapons with slightly different modifiers. They love that gear optimization stuff, and so there's a whole book of it.
Good news.
I know my friend Tom, a long-time member of RPR cast member, was like, well, I wasn't into it. They released there's a Cyberpunk book for body modifications, including making yourself look like a furry. It's like, yep, he wants to be a wolf man cyborg, and so he can be that, or a shark man, or whatever it is.
Give him a high five for me next time you see him, will you, Ross?
Yeah, he knows what he's about.
Yeah.
Self-knowledge is more to be treasured than rubies, Ross.
I'm not arguing. I applaud a man who knows what he wants. But yeah, thank you all so much for listening, and thank you all so much for supporting the Kickstarter. And we'll be talking to you in the future.
Presently, in the dark future.
Bye.
Bye.